Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us, taking time out of your schedule here to join us for the second press conference of the 44th annual meeting. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our audience who are watching us over our web channel as well. The theme of this press conference is actually very important. It's very consistent with a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the talk and hopefully outcomes that will be had from this annual meeting. It's about European research. This is a press conference organised by the European Research Council under the banner Research for Growth. I will keep my own comments to a minimum to allow my esteemed colleagues here to do the talking. I will just first introduce them. So to my immediate left, I have Helga Nowotny, who was the president of the European Research Council from 2010 to 2013, still very much involved in the organisation. I'm very honoured to be joined by Mr. Elio di Rupo, the Prime Minister of Belgium, and on the far left, Sir Tim Hunt, Professor of Cancer Research UK, based in the United Kingdom, and again involved in the ERC and is continued striving for excellence in innovation. I'd first like to invite Prime Minister Di Rupo to say a few words and talk about the efforts that Belgium is making in the field of European innovation to raise competitiveness, create jobs, and fulfil the positive outcomes we hope to achieve going forwards.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the European Research Council for inviting me to this press conference, and it's also a great pleasure to have a Nobel Prize winner with us today. Being a PhD in chemistry myself, I'm truly honored to have the opportunity to speak to you today. Ladies and gentlemen, it's clear that fundamental research is of the highest importance. It's the only way to guarantee that Europe's research will be competitive and of great quality. The European Research Council plays a major role in that respect. The Council and other research infrastructures also offer unique research services to people from various countries, permitting the application of theory. Let's take the example of François Englert, the Belgian physicist who was awarded the 2013 Nobel Prize together with Peter Higgs. The bold intuition of Englert 50 years ago, postulating the existence of the scalar boson responsible for the mass of elementary particles, is one thing, the most important thing. But he had to be associated with the CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, where the experimental confirmation of the theoretical prediction was obtained. Without this research infrastructure, co-founded by Belgium, no discovery of the famous boson, and probably no Nobel Prize for my fellow countryman François Englert. Ladies and gentlemen, innovation is a key priority in Belgium. We are financing research through federal and regional agencies and through a countrywide network of universities. In this regard, I agree with the idea as advocated in the European research area objectives of a greater alignment between European and national research programs. More than 80% of the research budgets are managed by national authorities and their parliaments. More cooperation between these national authorities avoid duplication and create critical mass. Ladies and gentlemen, reshaping the world also means fighting poverty and protecting our planet. R&D is a determinant factor in the creation of growth, but we will only achieve durable growth and durable prosperity if we use scientific research and innovation to reduce inequalities. Belgian researchers and Belgium-based companies, for instance, have been developing solutions to improve access to basic needs such as drinkable water, food, and medical care. Ladies and gentlemen, as the future of the world depends largely on scientific developments, investment in research, education, and innovation need to be safeguarded. I know this is a costly business, and some European member states have reduced their research funding under the pretext of austerity. Clearly, it's a mistake. The example of Sir Hunt of François Anglaire is clear. We must invest in fundamental research with result being appreciated in the long term. We cannot straitjacket research by only requiring short-term objectives for industrial processes. In each case, Belgium continues to commit itself to research excellence despite fiscal consolidation measures of around 22 billion euros. In 2012, total Belgium expenditures on R&D amounted to 8.4 billion euros, thanks to the investments of private companies, higher education institutions, public authorities, and private non-profit organizations. This amounts to 2.24% of our GDP, a historical record, ranking us 8th out of the 28 European member states. Thanks to these efforts, Belgium research institutions and companies are, for example, at the forefront in the development of vaccines, stem cell research, or cancer treatments. And the Belgian government has also increased budgets for inter-university cooperation and opened it up to institutions of other EU countries. At the same time, we have expanded our contribution to the European Space Agency, bringing it to more than 200 million euro a year. That makes us the 5th net donor to the agency. And we have also taken favorable tax measures for research. For instance, a company hiring a researcher with a monthly net salary of around 3,000 euros can save 20,000 euros a year. And the kind of support has more than doubled between 2008 and 2012, passing from almost 300 million euro to more than 600 million euro a year. That and other Belgian measures make that within Europe, according to the OECD, only in Austria and France, public support for private research is higher than in Belgium. Ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear, R&D cost-cutting must not and cannot be the answer. On the contrary, our engine needs more fuel, and we want to stimulate our economic growth and to reduce inequalities. Investing in R&D is a leverage for sustainable solutions in and beyond times of budgetary restraint. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, I wish to salute scientists all over the world. They are at the source of our knowledge and thus of our ability to improve reality. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Now, I'd like to have some European perspective. We've had some very good examples of a successful country within Europe maintaining its drive for innovation. And Ms. Nowotny, please give us the perspective of the ERC in driving frontier investment.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to convey the greetings of my successor, Professor Jean-Pierre Bourguignon, who has taken office on the 1st of January. Unfortunately, he has a fractured arm and could not come. So this is why I'm sitting here, but it's a great honor to be here. And I'm very happy that I can complement what the Prime Minister said about the importance of investing in times of austerity, especially into frontier research, as we call it. The European Research Council was set up in 2007, and it is the first time in 2007 that there was pan-European competition for any researcher coming from Europe or even from outside of Europe under the condition that they would be willing to work in Europe. And in these past 7 years, we have funded more than 4,500 top researchers, 2/3 of whom are starting grantees or consolidated grantees, as we call them, belonging to the younger generation, and 1/3 are advanced, established scientists. So this means that we have recognized the importance that Europe as part in this global competition that we are facing, and we can see the rise of publications, scientific publications in Southeast Asia and other places, that Europe as a continent continues to invest in frontier research. Now, with the new framework program called Horizon 2020, which also starts on the 1st of January this year, the ERC has been recognized as a success story. And the form that this recognition has taken is that we have seen a considerable, substantial increase of our budget, going from 7 billion euros now to 13 billion for the next 7 years. And the topic that we are really, all of us here are interested in, is what is the connection between frontier research, where you do not know the outcome of your work. Frontier research means you're pushing the boundaries of what you know into the unknown, and you cannot say what you will find. And yet, this is what the history of science has taught us over the last 450 years. There are just some very fantastic technological, medical, and therapeutic and other things that come out of investing in frontier research. And the connection to what I would like to call radical innovation, the change of a paradigm as it has come about with the rise of the computers, the kind of data-driven research that we now are all habituated to. All this goes back to the work of theoretical and experimental work that was done 50 years, 60 years ago. And therefore, I think it is a necessity, an imperative, in fact, if we want to reshape the world, that in times of austerity, this must continue, and at European level, it will continue. We have also, from the ERC, set up a very small scheme. It's called the Proof of Concept for those researchers who are awarded a very prestigious ERC grant, and we have gained an enormous recognition as the gold standard in Europe in terms of top research. these grantees, if they have an idea themselves or in their team that they think that this can be brought to market, they can apply for a proof of concept. They get a relatively small additional sum of money that allows them to look into patents, allows them to set up a business plan for startups, etc. So this is a very concrete contribution we make to the field of innovation. But above all, we are raising the awareness of these 4,500 people who are really passionate about their research. And they cannot say what will come out of it, but they are aware if there is a good idea, we can take this idea one step further to market. So I would just like to conclude in summing up why is the ERC here at Davos. These 4,500 researchers that are all over Europe, although we see a concentration in some parts of Europe, as you would expect. And Belgium, by the way, does very well in terms of ERC grantees. Given the size, it has 140 ERC grantees. And some excellent universities and research organizations where they are working. I would like to emphasize that it is important for the ERC to have this visibility, and you as the ones who come from the media, you can help us to continue with this visibility. And the message is, even if policymakers, not all are as wise and farsighted as the Prime Minister here, who think we now have to go for the short term and the impact-driven, short-term impact-driven research, that it is important that we keep the long-term perspective that science offers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we go for questions, I'd just like to invite Sir Tim Hunt, Professor of Cancer Research UK, to talk a little bit about the theme of excellence only and how you ensure ongoing excellence in European innovation.
Yes, thank you very much. So we really have two mottos in the ERC. Keep it simple and keep it excellent. Those are our guiding principles, and they're the only ones. Just like running a restaurant and keeping it at the peak of perfection day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, it's easier said than done. Maintaining high standards isn't easy. How do we do it? Well, the answer is really very simple. We identify the top experts in a variety of fields, and one thing I'd like to stress is that the ERC doesn't only support scientific research, we also support research in the social sciences, including politics and economics, art history, literature. I mean, it's a broad church. But the key to identifying these excellent 4,500 grantees is to have panels and people who screen the grant proposals that come in. And the success rate of these grant proposals that come in is not high. It's somewhere, 12%, something of that sort. So your chances are only about 1 in 10 of getting a grant. That means, hopefully, if our panels are doing their job, these are really the top people in their field. And as long as that continues, I think we can be sure that European money will be well spent supporting basic research into all kinds of fields. And it's a very strange thing, but this is something really relatively new for Europe, because in the olden days, I was shocked to discover the idea of the European research was to support industry in various forms. And actually, remarkably, the most important thing was really sort of mobility of the people, contracts for doing research. I maintain you can't contract to do research because, as Helga stressed, you don't know what you're going to find. So how can you make a contract to find something when you don't know what it is that's there? It was absolutely crazy. And actually, they didn't even bother to measure the outcomes of the research. The ERC has changed all that. And I think it's one of the best research councils, and even better than the ones we have in my own country, where there is a terrible tendency these days to put a strong emphasis on what people call translational research. In other words, research which is dedicated to particular topics. This implies that we already know everything that there is to be known, and we don't. I mean, there are just hundreds of things. I mean, one only has to think of the brain, for example. I mean, we don't have a clue how the brain works. We know it has nerves in it, but that's about it. How those nerves are connected together. About 25 years ago, Sidney Brenner in Cambridge worked out how the nervous system of the nematode worm was wired up. But they still don't know how the worm wriggles. Amazing, you know? So even such a simple thing, I forget how many neurons it has. It only has about 100 neurons, and you would think it would be easy to figure out how the worm thinks and works, but it isn't. Now, there are people who want to sort of work out the connectivity of all the human neurons. I say if you can't work it out for a worm, it's unlikely you're going to succeed with humans, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, the ERC is a fantastic advance, and this idea that we judge each other in a pan-European, not only European, by the way, we have several Americans and other people from outside Europe on our granting panels, really ensures this high degree of excellence, and long may it continue, because it's absolutely crucial. There's so much to find out. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Tim. Possible insight into future research of the ERC into neuron behaviour in worms. Before we go for questions, could you please give me an indication who would like to ask a question? Raise your hand, please. Okay. Is that a question? Was that a hand at the back? Yes, madam. Microphone here, please. Could you give us your name, please, and also your organisation?
Thank you. Ting Yan from China Business News. I'm wondering which are the areas you think China and Europe can deepen cooperations to build innovative economies? And also, does ESC have any cooperation with Chinese government or Chinese institutions? Thank you very much.
So Chinese European cooperation, past and present and future.
Well, from the ERC perspective, I want to emphasize the ERC is part of the Horizon 2020 program and the framework. There are parts of the program where you have cooperation outside Europe, etc. The ERC is focusing on individuals, individual principal investigators. So from this point of view, we welcome also Chinese if they want to work in Europe. And we were in Dalian last year, and we were also in China before. But there is a new development that may be of interest also to China. We now have signed 2 agreements, one with the National Science Foundation of the United States and one with the government of Korea, to make it possible to have persons selected on the US side or on the Korean side to work with our grantees in Europe. And this is a way of cooperating, if you want. But the topics, and this is a peculiarity of the ERC, as you heard from Sir Tim and myself, in frontier research, you do not know what you will find. So the ERC has no thematic priorities, because we think the researchers know best where the next hot topics are. Then later comes the phase when you have to, you have goals, you have a mission-driven kind of research. Then comes the step where you actually build prototypes, etc. But we are at the very upfront of knowledge generation. And there we say we leave it up to the individual researcher. We try to find and fund the very best. So I would invite China to come to us, and also we could have such an agreement also in the area of frontier research.
Prime Minister, would you like to have any comments on that? Okay, next question, please. Okay, gentleman at the front.
Frederick. Hello? Yes. Frederick Rohat, I'm journalist at L'Echo in Belgium. I would like to, Miss Nowotny talked about global competition. For Belgium, a big question is still the brain drain. I would like to know if you have fresh figure on the brain drain in scientific fields in Belgium, and if you think that there need to be, if there are other measures that need to be done to prevent this phenomenon.
Can I?
Of course.
Sir, please.
Okay. I think it's not a correct vision of our researchers. We have, as you have said a few minutes ago, many top-level researchers in many fields. And we are well known to have such great top researchers. And I agree with what is it's said here on the table. And we have taken a lot of measures. For instance, the tax incentive to keep the researchers in Belgium cost a lot of money for the government, 600 million euros per year. For a middle-sized country as Belgium, it's a lot of money. And the reason is the will to keep the researchers in our country. But be sure that we have for vaccines, for cancer, other medical field, also material sciences, particles, a lot of very top researchers, and also in the economy of other fields. So I'm not convinced that there is a flow from Belgium to the other countries. But we have to do more, if it's possible, with European Union, to keep in Europe and to welcome in Europe more and more top researchers.
I was very happy to see where Helga and I visited the University of Louvain, and I was
Yeah.
shocked and surprised to find two of my colleagues working there. So it's not all one. It's not all. It's not all go away. It's also
We, from an ERC point of view, we speak about brain circulation. And especially young scientists are well advised, to go and see how the scientific world looks in another place. Of course, we don't want to lose all of them forever.
no.
So it is important to be attractive for those who wish to come back. And I think especially for Europe, this is very important. And there are some countries that clearly have an enormous loss of young, talented people, especially in Southern Europe these days. And this is, again, one of the reasons why I think it is so important in times of austerity not to cut the branches of young, talented people. And otherwise, in these countries, you have a lost generation. And it takes many years of training. It takes many years of hard work. And even if science is a passion, you still need to work hard at times also. And all this then is lost if these young people see no chance anymore. So I think for Europe as a whole, we have to recognize that in parts of Europe, this is becoming a real problem. And this is possibly a lost generation of young, talented researchers.
Yeah, I mean, I could single out the example of Spain, where they were 20, 30 years ago, a fairly scientific, at least in my field, biology, a rather scientifically backward country. And then the government started investing, and both in Madrid and Barcelona particularly, I mean, really fine laboratories sprang up, and young Spaniards who've been trained elsewhere in Europe and America came to Spain. But now the government has been so mean, and it's just sort of uncertain. That's the problem. I mean, the minute you get people not sure whether they're going to be have a long-term future in basic research. They vote with their feet because they're unbelievably talented people. These, I mean, they're really they're the tops, and they vote with their feet.
Thank you very much. Lost generation, and of course, a recurring theme of this year's annual meeting is what we do to avoid a lost generation and avoid intergenerational crisis, which Professor Klaus Schwab identified as the #1 challenge we face today in our press conference last week. So I thank my panel very much for contributing to the discussion and outlining the very important role that innovation across the world has to play in helping us avoid this. And thank you all for joining us as well. I wish you a very successful meeting.